1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's Talk Radio. This is Your Turn, a live call-in show featuring spirited discussion and debate about issues that matter to the community. Stay with us to hear what Northwest Florida thinks. Better yet, call in at 623-1330 and tell us what you think. It's Your Turn here on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's Talk Radio. Now, here's the host of Your Turn.
The following presentation is controversial and may be offensive to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Radio from the heart of America now.
America is back, standing tall, standing tall.
Ronald Reagan was the one who said that we are a shining city on a hill. We've slid down the side of that hill.
I would like to take all the credit for this.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
And now, the Commander-in-Chief is back. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
And we are back. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. If you had the opportunity to be a part of the first hour, you heard a Power Pack show. And, of course, for the second hour, as promised, Detective Mike ZULLO from the Sheriff Arpaio investigation will be with us. Now, folks, let me tell you, I'm going to bring him on in just a moment, but I want to tell you, folks, if you want to call and be a part of the show today, you can do that, 850-623-1330. Now, give Mike and I a chance to, you can call right now and go ahead and get in the queue if you'd like to reserve your spot. Talk to our program director, Mallory. If you're calling long distance, let her know. We'll try to move you up to the front of the line. But give Mike and I a chance. I want to introduce him, and I just want him to give us a good rundown of what has happened in this case and what's going on. And then in the meantime, you just call in if you want to ask me some questions, because you know I've been involved in this for 3 years. If you want to ask Mike ZULLO the questions, because he is the consummate expert in this. He's had his hands in it up to his elbows. He knows the scoop on this investigation. He can probably answer any question you would ask him, other than those he would not be allowed to by law to answer. But other than that, he knows the stuff. So feel free to call in, talk to Mallory, tell her you want to get on the air. Now, when you do call in this hour, it has to be in line with what Mike and I are talking about. Also want to remind our listeners, you can listen to us streaming live over the internet. Of course, just go to carlgallups.com, top right-hand corner, click Listen Live, or go to 1330weby.com. Also, let me remind you, you can listen to us anywhere in the world there is a cell phone connection and internet connection on TuneIn Radio. If you have a smartphone, go to your app store and download TuneIn Radio. TUNEIN is one word, TuneIn Radio. Download it, search for 1330 WEBY. When you find it, plug it into your favorites, and there you are. And my son texted me a little while ago, said he's listening. I've been listening from Mississippi, Louisiana, all over the Gulf Coast on his cell phone while he's at work. And so it's a really, really cool way to stay in touch. Well, let's go right to the phone lines. Mike ZULLO, thank you so much for being a part of Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups today. We're honored to have you with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Mike. You and I talked for a long time on the phone the other day, so you know my background, 10 years in law enforcement, some 30 years almost in ministry now, and of course 10 years in talk radio. And ever since this was first brought up literally by Hillary Clinton, I've been all over this from kind of an old cop kind of mentality, and just somebody that's a thinker and a reader and an analyzer. And I just started digging through the process, became friends with Dr. Jerome Corsi. I've had him on the show. I became friends with Dr. Alan Keyes, of course, who ran against Obama. He knows a bunch about this. I've had him on the show. I've made videos. They've gone viral. I've done some investigation on my own. I've written some articles. I've been involved in this up to my eyeballs, not the extent to which you have, though, especially of late. And that's why we're having you on, because, man, Mike, I just appreciate your attitude. I remember when I called you the other day, I said, look, would you be willing to let people talk to you? And you said, Carl, people can ask me anything. There's nothing that I won't answer. And I appreciate that. So, Mike, welcome to the show. Let me tell you folks who this is. That's Mike ZULLO, Z-U-L-L-O. He is the lead investigator for the Sheriff Arpaio investigation, which, of course, came down March the 1st, 2012, hour-and-a-half news conference, which revealed that the birth certificate that Obama dangled before our face, April the 27th, 2011, is a forgery. It's a fraud. And among other things that were revealed in that news conference, and Mike Zullo led that off. So, Mike, I have a ton of questions. I know others will as well, but let's just do this. Why don't you just kind of introduce yourself? Tell us about the website where people can go to donate to further investigation, because I'm understanding that none of this is being done at taxpayer expense, and it's being done on donations. And so I want you to tell us all about that, give us an introduction of yourself, and then just give us kind of a brief overview of what happened and where we are.
Well, to put it all into a nutshell, going back to about September of last year, the controversy for the birth certificate has been escalating and escalating and escalating. Yeah. And during that time, Tea Party movement out here in Arizona petitioned the sheriff with 250 signatures. They were asking the sheriff to look into the legitimacy of Barack Obama's purported birth certificate. They felt that he failed to satisfactorily identify himself with that birth certificate. They felt that birth certificate may indeed be forgery, and they asked the sheriff to look into it. They were concerned that their voting rights were going to be compromised.
Right.
Sheriff Arpaio really didn't know much about that at that point in time.
Right.
Everybody's heard about it, but he really didn't know anything in depth. He didn't even know if it was in his preview to look at.
Right.
Knowing the way the political climate is, the sheriff knew that he had to do something. These people came to him and earnestly were requesting this. He, being the head law enforcement officer in Maricopa County, he knew he had to do something with it. What he decided to do is the sheriff has at his disposal a posse, 3,000 volunteers, that at any given time the sheriff can swear those individuals in, giving them a scope of authority to assist him in any law enforcement endeavor that he deems necessary. Wanting to avoid controversy for using public money, taxpayer money, to make an inquiry as to what may be nothing more than a fishing expedition,
right,
he commissioned his cold case posse. The cold case posse is comprised of volunteers or former law enforcement, military, and legal professionals, attorneys and accountants alike. And he commissioned us, put together a 5-man team, and we made an inquiry into the validity of the birth certificate. It wasn't outside of 2 or 3 hours we initially got this document. It's not a document, really, it's an electronic file, that we came to a conclusion that, yes, there is something wrong. We didn't know exactly what was happening with it. We just knew you could do things on that document that you couldn't do on really any other document. Going forward from there, we decided to enlist the help of experts. And we got forensic document examiners, we got computer experts, we got software experts, and we basically piled into a meeting room for about 16 hours, and we dissected this document. And when it was done, we all unanimously came to the conclusion that this document is indeed fraudulent.
Yeah. Yeah.
We notified the sheriff that it was fraudulent, and then history right now is in the making.
Right. It absolutely is. And we're going to talk about that and the ramifications of the history that's in the making, all of the ramifications. There are social ramifications, there are legal ramifications, there are constitutional ramifications. But let me just clear something up. Now, I'm going to make some statements, Mike, based upon my understanding. Please hear me, Mike. My heart is right on this. And your heart is too, I do believe. The only dog I have in this fight is I want us to be a nation of law. I want our constitutional republic respected. This is not a black-white issue with me. It's not a Republican-Democrat issue with me. It's not even a conservative-liberal issue with me. This issue is about law and order and a constitutional republic. So I'm going to make some statements based upon what I think is correct. If any time in this hour you and I are talking, if I say anything wrong, Mike, please correct me. I don't mind. I want to be corrected. I want to be right on this, okay? Or we understand each other, right?
And I would ask the same of you. I mean, everyone's fallible. So if I say something and it doesn't sit right with you, please ask me about it. Right?
Okay.
Make sure that
good deal.
The truth here.
Good deal. And you see, that way I can go to sleep at night. I can look at myself in the mirror. I can look at my children and my grandchildren in the years to come, knowing that I have done what I thought was right. Now, so let me just ask you, it's my understanding that Sheriff Arpaio really started this to kind of clear Obama. I mean, as you said, he didn't really know all the details and all the facts. I mean, he's a busy man, and he was kind of staying clear of the whole birther controversy. But once he was presented with this petition, he basically brought this to you guys and said, look, I'm tired of dealing with this. Every time I go to a tea party to talk about law and order, I get hit with this. And can you guys clear this? Wasn't that kind of his attitude?
That was about the second sentence out of the sheriff's mouth when he called me down to his office. I had no idea that this was even on the burner, so to speak. I got a call to go down to his office one afternoon. The following morning, I was there. And he explained to me what happened. And right after that, he said to me, he goes, I want to make this perfectly clear. He goes, I want to be the guy that clears this, President.
Yeah.
He said, I want the country to move on from this.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah,
those were his instructions to me.
Yeah, and now he's being billed as some kind of villain or some kind of nut job, and this is a man with 50 years of law enforcement experience, 30 years at federal level, and a 5-time elected sheriff. I mean, this guy's far from a nut job. I mean, when I was a cop for 10 years, this is the kind of guy I would look up to and idolize and would want to work for, and yet he started off with no dog in the fight other than truth. Correct?
And that's all he's ever pursued. One thing about Sheriff Arpaio, and you just said it, being a police officer, he's the kind of guy that you want to work for. He is what's the remnant of old-time law enforcement.
Yeah.
People that stood up for the rule of law, didn't weigh the scales themselves.
Right.
It was either this way or that way, and if there was a way to clear you, they fought to do that.
Right. Right.
And that's what the man is about, and that's how he instructed us to proceed with this. We literally took that file, and my instruction to my team was, we're here to clear this document. Let's get to work.
Good. And, I've told my listeners that, and I'm so proud to hear you say that. Again, I've been vindicated by your affirmation, and I'm not seeking vindication or anything. I'm really not. It's just that this thing has been so distorted by the media, and so when you have a voice of reason, like myself, or like you, or Sheriff Arpaio, immediately we're castigated and we're lampooned and lambasted, and falsely so. I mean, we're called names, and rather than dealing with the facts, we're lambasted. So this is why I'm throwing this stuff out here, because I want people to hear it from the man who was responsible for this investigation. Now, it was also my understanding that a couple of the people who were on that panel of 5, and then with you make 6, on that panel there were a couple of people that were kind of, and I'll just say it like this, kind of pro-Obama. I mean, they kind of thought that it was kind of a waste of their time too. Isn't that correct?
That's true. We actually opened up the group past the 5 of us, and we went out to have a total of 11 people. The weekend meeting that I said, look, we're going to have to come to a conclusion here. We actually had, and unbeknownst to me, because I didn't ask for anybody's, qualification,
political
as far as
views,
political standing as a prerequisite. We actually had people in there that were, for lack of a better way to put it, far less liberal.
Yeah.
We had people in there that voted for the president.
Yeah, that's good.
And within 2 hours, they were all within unanimous agreement something was wrong with the document.
Yeah.
And at the end of the 8-hour session on the last day, they were cautious.
Yeah.
They said, we don't know enough to say it's fraudulent, but we know there's something severely wrong here.
Right. And see, Mike, that's amazing. We've got a quick timeout, Mike, but that's amazing to me because, well, it shouldn't be amazing, but that's how it's supposed to be done. It doesn't really matter. It shouldn't matter what a person's political persuasion is. The facts are the facts, and facts transcend politics. Supposed to, correct?
because they're supposed to. You would hope that's the way it is.
You would hope so. Mike, listen, we got to take a time out. Folks, you're listening to Mike Zullo, the lead investigator of the Arpaio investigation. And, of course, you're listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. We're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we'll have more with Mike and your phone calls. If you want to be a part of the show, 850-623-1330, and you can call in, tell Mallory Bardwell. And we got a power-packed show. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Hang in there, folks.
Now, back to your turn on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's talk radio. The phone lines are open, so call in and join the conversation at 623-1330.
Welcome back to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Sit down, buckle up, and hang on.
All right. And not only Carl Gallups, but, of course, Mike Zullo, the lead investigator, chief investigator for the Sheriff Arpaio investigation, Maricopa County, Arizona. Mike, welcome back to Freedom Friday. Thank you for spending time with us this afternoon.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Oh, I'm telling you, as I was telling you off the air, folks along the Gulf Coast especially, and then just my listening audience, we're livid about this, and we'll talk about why in just a few moments. But I've got callers on the line; they're blowing up the phone lines. I've got one from Miami that is called. I've got another one from South Carolina that's on the line. Folks all over the nation are listening to you, Mike. So thank you for being on. Now, listen, before we take these callers, and folks, if you call and the lines are jammed, just put it on redial and keep trying. Especially when you hear somebody hang up. If you get through, stay in the queue, stay patient, because Mike's going to be on until the top of the second hour. He's going to be on another 45 minutes, so be patient, and we'll get you on the air with Mike Zullo. But, Mike, before we get these callers on, tell us about the website where people who are interested in this can donate to this investigation team, because we're going to talk about this in a moment, but it's my understanding you guys have a whole lot more investigation to do. There's more possible crimes that have been committed and potential arrests that could be made in the future, and you guys are not taking tax money, so you need some donations. Tell them about it.
That's right. The Cold Case Posse is a 501(c)(3). We are a charitable organization. We're a community-based organization. As a result of this investigation, we are finding ourselves to be community-based for the entire nation. And none of us are compensated. We don't receive compensation for doing this investigation. The expenses that we incurred during this investigation, which are close to well over $40,000 right now, all come from donations. We have our website, which is www.m as in Mary, C as in County, S as in Sam, O as in Ocean, MCSO, ccp.org. So it's www.mcsoccp.org. And folks can go there. They can get updated information. They could also see videos of past press conferences or presentations that we've made, including the sheriff, on a number of them. And they can make a donation right from that site.
Okay.
$5 or $10 goes a long way for us.
Yeah, yeah, especially when, thousands of people are giving $5 or $10 or more. Yeah, and of course, the website again is mcsoccp.org. And folks, I know that's a lot of letters, but it stands for Maricopa County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Posse. If you can just remember that, mcsoccp.org, mcsoccp.org. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Mike. I'm going to put up a link at carlgallups.com. That's a whole lot easier for our listening audience to remember, and I'll do that this evening. So, folks, those of you listening, you'll get that link at the top of carlgallups.com as well. And go check that out, and please help them. Please help them do this. Well, Mike, listen, you ready to go to the phone lines? We've got about 5 minutes before the bottom of the, before our bottom of the hour break, but we've got folks on the line. Let's go ahead and do that. We've got to take our first caller from South Carolina. Brian, welcome to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Thanks for hanging on from South Carolina. And Mike Zullo is on the phone, so ask your question, Brian.
Hello, Carl. Hey, Mike. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I can hardly hear you, but I was wondering, have you heard the rumor that's whirling around the Internet? What people are saying is that today or either yesterday, Obama's lawyers admitted that the birth certificate that they had shown everybody is indeed a fraud. Have you heard that? I know you would have heard it, so that's why I'm asking.
I have. I've heard that rumor. We did look into it. I've actually reviewed the 3 hours of courtroom testimony. That actually was not correct. It is not what was said. What they basically stated, and this is, seems to be a pattern now with the administration. They come to every one of these ballot challenges empty-handed without the document, obviously, and they claim the document is irrelevant to the proceedings.
Right.
And that's simply because state law in just about every state does not require the presentation of a birth certificate.
Yeah, yeah. And
so what they actually said was, even if it was phony, it doesn't matter.
I know, and Mike, that's so... I'm just about to go through the roof right now because I'm thinking in a sane America with a sane person in the White House, if you were the president, Mike, if I were the president, and this was being leveled against me, and a sheriff with 6 investigators did a 1.5-hour national press presentation showing that my birth certificate was a fraud, and if I knew that I was legal, I would bring my valid birth certificate to every hearing, to every newspaper, to every media outsource, and just clear the thing up. Wouldn't you, Mike?
You would think, and here's the the bottom line of that. That is what a, for lack of a better word, innocent or honest individual would do.
That's right.
You know that from being in law enforcement. People that are innocent, they all do the same thing. They come with documents in hand.
And they prove their innocence.
They prove it because they know that they have to prove it in order for anybody to finally look for the perpetrator.
Right, and we've got a few minutes. Yeah, but to do the opposite, I was reading the clock wrong. I'm sorry for stumbling around there. But anyway, but to do the opposite and to say, well, I don't need that. Well, the state doesn't require that. Well, that wouldn't matter. Even if it was a fraud, it wouldn't matter because the state doesn't require it. I mean, that is... I'm a preacher. I can't cuss. I got to be careful. Mike, I'm telling you, my smoke is coming out of my ears. Mallory sees it right now. She's grabbed the fire extinguisher off the wall.
Well, think about it. It doesn't matter. It's not relative, but it was relative enough for you, midterm in your presidency, to display this to the world and call everybody who questioned it a carnival barker.
Thank you. That's right. It
makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't make sense, Mike, unless he's guilty. Unless it's a fraud. Unless he doesn't have one, Mike. And it's only been since Sheriff Arpaio's investigation that I've been saying, folks, he doesn't have one. and Mike, you may not want to make that claim, but that's the claim I'm making. Listen, we're going to take a time out. Mike Zullo, thank you so much for being with us. We've got another whole 30 minutes with Mike Zullo. We'll be right back. You're listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Mallory Bardwell, your world-famous producer. To those of you on the line, hang on. We do have some lines open. 623-1330, area code 850. We have with us today Mike Zullo, the lead investigator of Sheriff Arpaio's investigation. He's answering your questions and delivering the facts on this fraud, that's my word, in the White House. We have an illegal alien, commander-in-chief, a constitutional crisis, and you're going to hear all the details when we come back from this break.
Now, back to your turn on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's talk radio. The phone lines are open, so call in and join the conversation at 623-1330.
I'd like to make you an offer you can't refuse. If you people have more people tune in to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, my associates and I would consider this thing to be a personal favor. Now, here's Carl, the godfather of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
All right, and we are back. How appropriate for the topic that we're covering. Well, folks, listen, this last half hour of Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups is brought to you by all of the fine sponsors you just heard, plus a local sponsor right here along the Gulf Coast who really works hard to make sure that Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups stays on the air. And that's the local yokel. Claude and Melanie Duvall are the owners, and that's at the corner of Ward Basin Road and U.S. Highway 90 East that cuts right through Florida from east to west all the way across the state. But right here in Northwest Florida, Ward Basin Highway 90 East, Santa Rosa County. Claude and Melanie Duvall, they own the local yokel. It's really 4 businesses in one. It's a convenience store, a gas station, a deli, and a car wash. The deli is famous in this area. You can eat in or you can take out. Fresh fried and baked chicken. The convenience store, 5,000 individual items. The gas station, 100% ethanol-free gasoline, some of the best prices anywhere around, and a touchless, state-of-the-art car wash. These folks are community folks. Claude's family's been in the area for over 50 years. They support WEBY. They support Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. So support them, the local yokel, Claude and Melanie Duvall. Mike ZULLO, the lead investigator for the Arpaio Cold Case Posse investigation of the Obama birth certificate and the Obama fraud, is our guest today. Mike, thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
It is my pleasure.
Well, we do have a large listening audience along the Gulf Coast and then around the nation, as you've already heard, our callers coming in from everywhere. But let's. I'm going to go to the phone line. But basically, and you're going to get a chance to speak to these things more specifically in a moment, Mike. But basically, what we have, according to the investigation now, is all of the evidence points to, and I know there's been no trial, but you guys have presented basically a courtroom-ready presentation, an hour-and-a-half video presentation of all of your evidence. So all of the evidence says that the birth certificate that Obama presented is a forgery. And we also know from that investigation that the National Archives immigration records apparently have been tampered with. We also know from that investigation that apparently Obama's Selective Service records have been tampered with. Am I right so far?
You're 100% correct.
Okay. And now, what you and I were just talking with, this caller, now we have Obama's lawyers running around to these eligibility hearings in the various states saying, well, there's no requirement. No state has a requirement that we present a birth certificate. Therefore, we're not going to bring one. And even if what we presented was fake, it doesn't matter because we're not required to show it. How?
Well, she actually went one step further and said Mickey Mouse could be on the ballot.
Mickey Mouse could be on the ballot.
You literally said that. As a matter of fact, it upset the White House so much that they fired her from the case.
Unbelievable. This is, I feel like we're Alice in Wonderland and down the rabbit hole, Mike.
But, it's true, and it's within every, Secretary of State's office throughout all 50 states. There is really no way to statutorily stop someone from going on the ballot. Now, you can mount a ballot challenge in some states, but they tried that in Georgia and it failed.
Right.
But basically, if they sign a piece of paper attesting to who they are and they pay the fee, they're going to file. They're going to be on the ballot for president of the United States.
But isn't there any? I can't imagine that I could go down and sign up to run for sheriff and lie about who I am and what my qualifications are, and then have people say, "Well, there's nothing you can do about it." Surely there's something that can be done about it.
That goes to, the operative word there is lie. There is no vetting of these candidates. There is no legal authoritative entity, no law enforcement entity that vets these candidates. There is nobody out there to determine whether you're lying or not.
Yeah.
That's the travesty.
That's the travesty. Go ahead.
And that needs to be fixed.
Yes.
In our electoral process. That has to be changed.
It has to be changed quickly because we're going from a constitutional republic to a banana republic. Listen, I could talk to you about this for hours, but I want to hush and let our callers ask you some questions. Let's go back to the phone lines. We've got a guy, Ed, you've been hanging on. You're calling from Miami, and you've been hanging on a while. God bless you, Ed. Thank you for that. You're on the line with Mike ZULLO. Ask your question, and we'll go to some other callers.
God bless you. We'll spend $10. The president can be blackmailed by not-so-friendly government. He would not be acceptable to the U.S. Armed Forces. We have become the top banana republic in this hemisphere or in the world. I forget which.
Yeah. Well,
thank you very much. Listen to your answer, sir.
Okay, thanks. Well, what he was saying, Mike, I don't know if you could hear him with the 2 cell phone connections, but he basically was saying that, to serve in the armed forces, you cannot have any kind of anything in your background or records or any hint of anything in your records that could possibly make you susceptible to blackmail or allegiance to any other nation. You can't even serve in the military. Now, here's the commander-in-chief, and as it looks right now, and you and I could be wrong in the final analysis, they could come up with a perfectly legitimate birth certificate that forensics proves is legitimate. You've admitted that. Sheriff's admitted that. I'm admitting that. But as it stands right now, he has no birth certificate. And if he doesn't have one, the only other logical conclusion is he's a foreigner. And that's what he's saying. What do you say to that?
Well, you're correct. As far as we are concerned, he has now produced a legitimate birth certificate.
That's right.
And he has attested that this birth certificate, which we do not believe is legitimate, is in fact proof that he was born in the continental United States. We're not so sure that has happened.
Right.
Well, the absence of a birth certificate, the absence of support documentation, just the circumstances surrounding that document and how that document came to manifestation are enough to make even the best thriller crime novelist envy of a story like that.
Right.
I mean, it just goes beyond the pale. And the caller is correct. The assessment for the military is correct. I'll go one step further for you. We have documentation from the employment office of the federal government to be a custodian for the federal government. You have to swear allegiance to the United States.
Yeah.
That's on the application.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that to run for president of the United States. You don't have to do that to be on the ballot. You don't have to do that to even be elected.
Yeah, and to be the commander-in-chief of the military. Yeah.
That's a scary thought, isn't it?
It's unbelievable, Mike. It's unbelievable. Let's go back to the phone lines. I want to take these callers' questions, and then you and I've got some more discussing to do. Let's go to the phone lines. Pete, welcome to Freedom Friday. You've got a question for Mike ZULLO. Pete?
Showing up, and
Pete,
Carl,
Pete,
thank you
Pete.
for all you do.
Okay.
Joseph Goebbels would be pleased, wouldn't he? He would definitely be pleased. I'm reading in the Sunday paper. Maybe you can comment on it. The Associated Press has a little article that talks about Barack Obama when he was giving an interview to Univision in Central America, the Summit of the Americas. He said that we need to be transparent as possible, all the candidates that are running. And then he also said, I think it's important that any candidate in public office to be transparent as possible to let the people know who you are, what we stand for, and what you know. And then Barack Obama went on to say, I think it's just carrying on the tradition that has existed through the modern presidency. Can you believe for 236 years they've been playing by the rules, and all of a sudden this guy from Kenya kicking the can down the road? It's just unbelievable. Can you kind of comment on Barack even having the stones to even get up there and say, this was just last week, that the candidates need to be as transparent as possible, and here he is with Jay Bonnell's Social Security number, you know?
Thank you, Pete. Thank you. Yeah, so how does that strike you guys on the investigative team when you hear the man in the White House saying, and he did say that. Pete's right. I've got that on video. I've got it on P.P. Simmons' YouTube, where he said, we've got to be transparent. We've got to be transparent. Politicians need to be transparent. We need to know who they are. Barack Obama said that. How does that make you guys feel, sitting there looking at a birth certificate and looking at the National Archives and looking at the Selective Service records, knowing that this guy is anything but transparent?
Well, we can look at it from the one side of the equation, from our investigative side, and say, well, how there's transparency, you're concealing your identity.
Right.
But having been involved in this now for the last 7 months, and I was not a political junkie, now being immersed in this, I'm going to actually go out there and I'm going to tell you that I believe Barack Obama is being transparent. I think he's showing you exactly what he's about.
Yeah.
I think his actions speak volumes. His words you can't trust.
Right.
But his actions speak volumes. And I never thought I would say this. I never thought I would feel this way, perceive it this way. But I believe I have the facts to back it up. He's selling out our country.
Well, Mike, God bless you for saying it. I agree completely, and it scares me to death politically. Now I'm a Christian. You're a Christian. I'm not scared spiritually. I belong to the Lord, and I know what the Word of God says. But politically, and for the sake of our constitutional republic, yes. And Mike, I'm going to say it again, and then I've got a very important question to ask you. But if that birth certificate is a fraud and a forgery, and if no other state claims his birth, and if Hawaii can't produce one, then the only option is that he is not from the United States. If that's true, then he is a foreign national and perhaps an illegal immigrant. Perhaps an illegal immigrant, people. running our military, the commander-in-chief, an illegal immigrant. That's a distinct possibility as the investigation stands right now. Mike, you said that's true.
That's true. I mean, that would only be the conclusion that is left. Obviously, we don't have any indication that he, quote, we get into a constitutional problem.
That's right.
And I'm going to address, and I really don't want to go here because it's an argument that's probably going to ultimately have to be determined by a Supreme Court one day. But what you do have the natural-born citizen clause, and the natural-born citizen clause was put in there for a purpose.
Right.
And the purpose was to put separation between an individual who could be so close to another nation, either biologically or relationally, where they would have an allegiance to some place other than this country.
That's right.
And natural-born citizen is done by mechanism. It requires, by definition, 2 United States citizen parents.
Right.
And the place of birth either on U.S. soil, and I think it was later amended to other military installations.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. But that is by mechanism, and that is by God's design. It can only happen that way.
Right.
You have a situation here where the claim is we already know that the individual, and I say purported because I don't really have evidence that Barack Obama Sr. is his father.
Well, that's true.
All I see is a picture and people wanting to tell me this.
Right.
But I don't have any evidence of it. We know that there is his mother, and again, purported to be his mother, is a United States citizen. But I'm sorry to inform a lot of people that doesn't qualify as natural born.
No, it doesn't. Thank you.
And it's a really tough pill for people to swallow.
All right, let me ask you this question then, because it goes right to that. What about this argument? I hear it all the time. I know the answer, but I want people, and I've said the answer, but I want people to hear it from you. And I had this asked of me today, not on the air, but just before I came on the air by an Obama supporter. Well, there were newspaper announcements in the papers in Hawaii, and that settles it for me. The newspapers wouldn't have put those in there if he hadn't been born in Hawaii. What say you to that, Mike Zullo?
All right. Well, obviously, that would be a logical conclusion.
It would be.
Except it's factually flawed.
Right.
Hawaii is notorious for having satellite birth registry offices where individuals could literally go in and register another individual born in another country, a foreign birth, and register that birth in Hawaii and get a certificate of live birth.
Right.
Even though that person has never set foot on the soil of the United States of America.
And you guys have proof of that?
We have proof of that. We also have proof of individuals that were adopted, born in California, adopted in Hawaii, and given brand new certificates of live birth.
Wow.
And those were all put into that same registry.
Wow.
So what you have with this newspaper thing, that people seem to think this newspaper article trumps a birth certificate.
Right.
First of all, it does not.
Right.
But from their perspective, you're going back 50 years in time. Here's his birth record. It has to be so. Well, all it's telling you is this guy was born, but it doesn't tell you where.
That's right.
It doesn't tell you how. It doesn't tell you what time, what hospital, who the doctor was. It just says this person was born.
Right.
Well, we all know he was born.
Yeah, well, we hope. He might have been hatched. I don't know. Mike, listen, we got to take our last time out, and then when we come back, we'll have a good 10 minutes to spend. You're listening to Mike Zullo, the lead investigator, chief investigator for the Sheriff Arpaio investigation. Mike and I are going to chat about this for the last 10, 15 minutes or so, so get you a cup of coffee, an ice cold Coca-Cola, a glass of tea, whatever, and listen to us, because we're going to have some interesting stuff to share with you, things that you're not going to hear on the evening news tonight, but you'll hear it right here. We'll be right back.
Now, back to your turn on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's talk radio. The phone lines are open, so call in and join the conversation at 623-1330.
Aren't you glad that you patiently waited Carl is back. He is in the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio, and you are with him. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups.
All right, folks, welcome back. Listen, Mike ZULLO is with us, the lead investigator of the Sheriff Arpaio investigation. Mike, thank you for spending this hour with us along the Gulf Coast. You've enlightened us. Let me just say this, and by the way, you've been very gracious to give us this amount of time. I know there are a lot of other people that would love to have you on their programs. God bless you for choosing this one. Let me say this, Mike. It's my understanding, and I know that you can only tell us so much, but it's my understanding that there is more to come in the next few months and a deeper, broader investigation and some more revealing stuff. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we set out in the beginning to, authenticate this birth certificate. And in our first press conference, what we did is we just touched the surface to let the public know that this is no longer an inquiry. This is now a criminal investigation. We are still running extensive testing and experiments on that document. And we do plan in the very near future to make those findings public. That should, for, lack of a better way to put it, it should put the death nail in that birth certificate.
Okay. All right.
It will be probably finished beyond any doubt that thing is 100% manufactured.
Wow. Wow. Well, when do you anticipate something like this might be made public? Just a ballpark.
It maybe next month or June. I'm not sure yet. We're still feverishly working on it. We are exhausting every avenue.
Okay. Well, you know what's amazing? For the last several years, I've had all kinds of naysayers, call me names and tell me, how stupid I am, and I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I'm a cult leader, and all these different things that have been said because of my work on this and my insistence that this thing stunk to high heaven. And ever since Arpaio's investigations come out, I can't find these people anywhere, Mike. They won't call my show. I go to tea parties. I invite them to come and challenge me with facts. They don't show up. They don't ask questions. They've gone underground. The investigation has really vindicated me and the rest of us who have called this into question from the beginning. So my little threats are gone. But I understand Sheriff Arpaio, the threats haven't stopped with him. Plus, people in the mainstream media have been threatened. Tell us about some of the threats that have come your way.
Well, Sheriff Arpaio has received death threats over this investigation, and I believe they pursued one of those successfully. I believe that individual was charged and then found guilty of that. We just got a couple more, I think, a day or so ago against the sheriff. We haven't received any against the posse itself, but that doesn't mean they're not out there. We just may not know it.
Right.
The media, on the other hand, talk about going underground.
Right.
Mainstream media has not covered this story one iota since our press conference.
And it's the story of American history.
It's bigger than Watergate. It makes Watergate look like a dime store robbery.
Yeah, it's this. If this is a foreign national as our commander-in-chief, this is the story of American history, and the media won't cover it.
And they won't cover it. And the reason why they're not covering it is we have cultivated 3 independent sources, independent of each other, in different venues of mainstream media that have all told us the same story about threats from the administration or George Soros operatives.
Unbelievable.
Threatening FCC investigations, threatening Fox News, Rupert Murdoch with dismantling their empire, calling them a news monopoly and coming after them if they continue to run anything on this issue.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, it was so bad, some people have left that employment and even left the country for fear of their own physical safety. And to make matters even worse, this happened within a 24-hour span of time where people were filling in for major radio personalities.
Right.
And were told that morning, you will not talk about this. And they had programs all lined up.
Yeah.
And they were told that if you do talk about this, it will be the last time you talk anything over the airwaves. So they were threatened with their careers. Sheriff Arpaio and I were supposedly scheduled to go on a certain mainstream media radio show, and within hours we were canceled.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know what? Look at it from another perspective. If Sheriff Arpaio had stood up in our press conference and said, I have great news, this document is authentic,
yeah,
he would have been on every radio, every television station across the nation. They still would be interviewing him.
Yeah, they would still be interviewing him and hailing him as a hero. And, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, again, it just, folks, if you use your common sense. Well, Mike, we're out of time. There's so much more. Can I have you back sometime?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mike Zullo, God bless you. Take care of yourself. Be careful. We're going to keep our prayers over you. And, folks, let me encourage you. Pray for our nation. Right now, we do not have a constitutional republic. When the media won't do its job, when Congress won't do its job, when the Supreme Court won't do its job, when we've got a guy in the White House who says, I don't need to show you a birth certificate, and he's running the military, we have a banana republic. We don't have a constitutional republic. Folks, pray that God would be merciful and give us back our freedom and our constitutional republic. Pray for me, pray for ZULLO, pray for Arpaio, and many, many others who are speaking out on this. Pray for me as I travel around the Southeast and the nation and speak on this. Folks, thank you. You've been listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. God bless you, and God please bless America.
Get your copy of my new book, The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith. Considering the days in which we now live, you need this book. Available at Amazon.com and WND Superstore. Get your copy today.